Welcome to Season 2. In our first arc, we built the machine. We automated your brain, your top-of-funnel pipeline, your fulfillment, and your corporate governance. You have a zero-employee engine pumping out revenue. And now, the market is adjusting. The macroeconomic reality of 2026 is brutal. Foundational models have achieved functional parity. OpenAI, Anthropic, open-source weights, they are all racing to the exact same bottom of near-zero pricing and near-infinite intelligence. If your enterprise value relies solely on calling an external API smarter than your neighbors, your competitive advantage is an illusion. You are standing on a shifting sandcastle. The wrapper fraud is being exposed. When anyone can spin up your feature set in 20 minutes with a localized prompt, your only path to absolute survival is data gravity. You cannot compete on the raw model layer. You must compete on the context layer. You must build a machine that doesn't just use data, it manufactures its own uncopyable intelligence. Today we engineer the synthetic data moat. Let's remap your defensive infrastructure. To survive the commodity wall, we must transition from a passive consumption architecture to a recursive feedback loop. The architecture consists of 3 specialized modules. Look at Node 1, the telemetry agent. It does not merely log clicks or SQL queries. It records the complete cognitive friction points of your users, the exact moments where your autonomous agentic system required a manual override or returned an imperfect output. This raw telemetry is passed to Node 2, the synthesizer matrix. The synthesizer is your proprietary cleanroom. It takes those raw operational failures, filters out any identifying consumer data, and programmatically generates thousands of synthetic edge case variations. It creates simulated training sets of highly specific, verticalized problems that no public internet crawler or frontier model has ever seen. Finally, these synthetic training pairs are routed to Node 3, the distilled edge core. This is a compact, highly optimized local model that you own and host natively. By continuously fine-tuning this edge core on your proprietary synthetic data, it becomes hyper-specialized in your narrow niche. It operates with a fraction of the latency, a fraction of the token cost, and an absolute defense against plagiarism. Your software is no longer a wrapper. It is an impenetrable context vault. Let's look at the financial math of data sovereignty. The metrics that dictate survivability in this paradigm have shifted entirely away from traditional usage metrics. When you deploy a generic wrapper, your unit economics are at the mercy of frontier model API pricing. But when you transition to a distilled edge core fueled by your synthetic data loop, your reliance on massive general-purpose LLMs collapses. Our benchmark indicates a 94% reduction in recurring inference costs. You are swapping expensive public API queries for ultra-low-cost, internal local compute execution. This introduces the concept of compounding cognitive equity. In traditional software, your product value scales linearly with features. In an AI-native setup with a synthetic loop, your product value scales exponentially with telemetry. Every user interaction manufactures proprietary asset blocks that reinforce the core system, creating a widening defensibility gap that no venture-backed clone can cross by simply buying raw API access. But ignore this warning at your peril: the echo chamber degradation. If your synthesizer matrix generates low-quality, repetitive data without rigid deterministic guardrails, your local model will suffer from model collapse, hallucinating on its own synthesized outputs. You must implement a strict discriminator protocol, a separate, mathematical validator that evaluates the semantic diversity of every synthesized token before it hits the fine-tuning pipeline. The era of easy arbitrage is over. The founders who built fragile zero-moat wrappers over public models are currently being squeezed out by margin erosion. But your micro-monopoly is immune. By capturing your own context and manufacturing your own data, you own the asset. Your imperative this week is tactical and unyielding. Stop treating user data as passive logs. Set up your telemetry pipelines. Build the synthesizer cleanroom. Begin distilling your specialized edge model. Squeeze out the middleman. You now hold the framework for non-commoditized defense. But how do you deploy and host these custom edge models securely without exposing your core IP or bleeding capital on idle GPU infrastructure? In Episode 2, we dive into the metal. We will dissect the secure compute architecture, how to orchestrate serverless, zero-trust GPU clusters that execute your proprietary weights with absolute security and zero operational waste. The data is yours. Now we secure the infrastructure. Stay ruthless.